with your final speeches.
There's a part of our justice system here in the United States that is not talked about much. This could be because there's not much known about it, or because some people see it as a forbidden topic. This is what is used for the worst of the worst. This is the death penalty. My goal is not to persuade you one way or the other. My goal is to inform you about this topic that receives little attention. I will inform you about the current laws on the death penalty, the different methods used, some statistics about executions, and finally take you through the final 24 hours on death row. As you can see by the map, over half the states currently use the death penalty. Any state that is colored uses the death penalty. The death penalty is also used by the United States military and the United States government. Connecticut and New Mexico, which are the two states in blue, they have recently abolished the death penalty. But they still have inmates on death row who will still be executed, so no new inmates will be put on death row. New Mexico still has 2 inmates on death row, and Connecticut still has 11. All states have lethal injection as the primary method of execution. This means that if the inmates does not choose a different method, they will receive the lethal injection. Of course, murder is a crime that could land you on death row. There are also non-murder crimes that could land you on death row, such as a second offense rape. Your fate is left up to the judge and may be assisted by the jury. So murdering someone in a state with the death penalty does not guarantee that the American justice system will end your life. It depends on what kind of day the judge is having. There are, however, statistically less or greater chances that you will end up on death row, such as race or gender. These statistics you will now hear are current as of May 2nd, 2012, from the Death Penalty Information Center in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., by the way, does not have the death penalty. Since the death penalty was passed back into federal law in 1976, 1,295 people have been executed. Now that could be 1 or 2, a couple higher since May 2nd, but not that much. 3,189 remain on death row as of January 1st, 2012. As I said earlier, race plays a big role in your fate. 58% of those executed were white, 34% black, and 8% Hispanic. The race of the victim is also a factor. Of those executed, 76% of the victims were white, 15% were black, and 8% Hispanic. This means that if you murder a white person, you're more likely to be put on death row. Lethal injection is by far the most used method of execution, claiming the lives as 1,121. The process involves the inmate being strapped to the gurney and hooked up to heart monitors. 2 needles, one as a backup, are placed into the inmate's usable veins, usually in the arm. Long tubes are then attached to the needles, and the harmless saline solution is pumped right away. At the warden's signal, a curtain is raised, allowing the witnesses to see the inmate. Next, sodium thiopental is pumped in, putting the inmate to sleep. After the inmate is asleep, Pavlon or pancuronium bromide is pumped in, paralyzing the inmate. Finally, potassium chloride is pumped in, stopping the heart. A doctor will then confirm that the inmate is dead. The electric chair is a much simpler process, claiming 157. The inmate is strapped into the chair with a metal cap and electrode in it, is placed over a saline-soaked sponge on their head. Another electrode is placed on the leg. The inmate is blindfolded, and the warden signals for the current to start flowing. The current flows for about 30 to 45 seconds and is then cut. The body is then left to cool for a couple minutes, and is then checked by a doctor to see if the inmate is dead. If not, the process is repeated until the inmate is finally dead. The body undergoes extreme changes and injuries, such as the eyes popping out of the head, vomiting blood. The body stretches to the point that it'll look like it'll explode. and the skin being so hot that it would blister you if you touched it. And this chair is pretty close to what's used today. I mean, that's your modern, looks a little barbaric, but that's what they use. The gas chamber is a slow death, claiming 11. The inmate is strapped to a chair above a pail of sulfuric acid in an airtight chamber. A stethoscope is attached to the inmate for the doctor to confirm the death. The warden gives the sign for sodium cyanide to be dropped into the acid, releasing hydrogen cyanide gas. If the inmate breathes deeply, the process will go much faster, although most try to hold their breath. The inmate does not immediately lose consciousness. Their eyes begin to pop and the skin turns purple. It takes about 7 minutes for the poison to kill the inmate. The chamber is then fanned out, and workers in masks and gloves enter the chamber and shake any gas out of the inmate's hair. The firing squad, claiming only 3, can be the quickest and most straightforward. The firing squad remained illegal only in Utah. Lethal injection is now the sole method, unless otherwise chosen by the inmate prior to the law change. The inmate is strapped to a chair with a mask put over his head. There are sandbags to soak up the blood. 5 shooters, 1 with a blank, so they're not certain if they killed the inmate, fire at the inmate from 20 feet away. If the heart is missed, the inmate will bleed to death. Hanging is only used in Delaware and Washington, claiming only 3 again. The inmate is weighed the day before, and a rehearsal is done with sandbags of the same weight. This is done to find what the quickest death would be. If the rope is too long, the inmate could be decapitated. The rope is also boiled ahead of time to avoid stretching. The inmate's hands and legs are secured, a mask put on, and a noose placed around the neck, with the knot behind the left ear. The trap door is open, dropping the inmate, breaking the neck. Instant death is very unusual and may take up to 45 minutes. As promised, it's time for your final 24 hours on death row. Lucky you live in the state of your choice, meaning you get to pick the way to go. Which way are we going out? Firing squad? Firing squad. Excellent choice. You've spent years on death row for murdering a white man and woman. Your final day is here. You're given your last meal, which is on a budget. $15 sounds good. You eat your final meal and give your final statement. The statement time differs state to state. Some only allow a written statement, and that's given to usually the witnesses. It's like your apology, it's whatever you want, as long as it fits in the time limit. After your statement, you're strapped to the chair. You hear the guns being cocked, followed by ready, aim, fire. The end.